pretty crazy. I'm quadruple booked for right now. Makes me sad.
But you chose to be here with us.
I did because this is my favorite project.
Yeah. Yeah, I got it. Yeah.
Those other calls suck anyway.
Mm.
Work that.
Got a shout from my lovely fiance of, hey, please close the door. I'm in class. Yeah.
She doesn't want to learn about amazing open source stuff.
You're not. Bro, I don't know if you saw my thing, but the yeah, the 2023 link, this document that you just linked to is not in the meeting invite.
This document I linked to is not in the invite. Which document would that be?
The meeting notes document is not in the meeting invite. It still points to the 2022 document.
Right. That is an ongoing project I am working on.
That's a project?
It is.
That's a project?
I need to get a new meeting set up that I'm waiting on, and I've appropriately set that up. So once they do that, I'm going to say, hey, FYI, could you fix the other things? So I am waiting for my partners to get back to me so I can get things corrected.
Ay, ay, ay.
It's like making stone soup.
Yes.
I have the stone and I'm waiting for everyone else to bring the ingredients.
Yeah, I guess. That.
I have posted a link to the agenda in the chat. If I could have everyone mark their attendance. If you have any new items to discuss today, please put that under the open section. We'll get started in just a minute.
I had a bit of a hiccup with my drive that I'm fixing, and then I'm sending in my PRs just so that it be noted.
Cool, thanks. All right, it is 3 after the hour. If I could have folks mark their attendance, if you have any opens, please add them. Welcome to the January 11th edition of the Vulnerability Disclosures Working Group. Happy 2023, everybody. Glad to see we are continuing to operate and roll forward. Do we have any new friends to the group that wanted to introduce themselves and say hello to the team?
Carolyn Sanders. I'm a contractor with My Point Group supporting a lot of federal clients. Thanks,
Awesome.
everyone.
Welcome, Carolyn. Anybody else?
Hi, everyone. I'm Yesenia Sen. Hey, Crow. See you again. I'm from the Linux Foundation Alpha Omega project with Jonathan.
Yeah, I'm newly affiliated with I actually work for the OpenSSF now.
Nice. Nice. Any other new friends that wanted to say hello? All right. Most importantly, since we have a lot of people that kind of passively monitor this group, can I please get a volunteer to help us take notes today? It's hard to talk and herd the cats and type at the same time. Your fellow OpenSSFers would be much appreciative if folks are able to assist in making notes.
I'll take notes.
Oh, thank you. And everybody can join in too. Give me a second. All right. First and foremost on the agenda, the LF is hosting the Open Source Summit North America. It'll be in May in far off and exotic Vancouver, British Columbia, a real tropical hotspot in May. They have a call for papers that will close February 5th. So this group especially, I would strongly encourage us to brainstorm and have some ideas and submit one-to-many presentations to that. There's a bunch of little micro conferences, and there most likely will be an OpenSSF day as well. But I would strongly encourage this group to put together some proposals talking about our work, maybe even having a session dedicated on some of our CVD guides. If they're ideally, there should be like real Linux developers there. So maybe we can entice them in to learn about the maintainer's CVD guide. I'm glad to help coordinate anybody to get papers done. I'm glad to co-present. I'm glad to review, provide feedback on anything. However you are interested in contributing, let me know. But deadline is February 5th. I already have a couple things lined up with Wheeler for the the second best working group, because this is the best, obviously. But he and I will be talking about some best practices stuffs, hopefully. And if this group's interested, please let me know. And ideally going forward, I will work on getting some kind of calendar so that we can be kind of strategic about how we engage with the assorted security and open source conferences so that we can start to get our message more broadly heard. All right. Any questions, comments, suggestions, feedback on the North America Vancouver conference? There also will be a European and probably an APAC conference. So if you do propose anything, keep an eye for portability, that you potentially might be able to reuse that for those other conferences so those different constituent groups can hear a consistent message. All right, next up, I will give an update on the open source security CERT special interest group progress. We are status beige. I submitted a issue with attack December 9th. I have received an incredible volume of 0 comments on it. I've also talked at 2 TAC meetings about it, and I probably will talk at a 3rd TAC meeting in 2 weeks again. So right now, the CERT is on hold, pending TAC comments, feedback, and then moving it up to the GB for funding consideration. So hopefully we will have approval and we'll begin to actually start funded work maybe the end of February. We'll see how that goes. I'll continue to supply updates on that. And if you, in the meantime, if you get a chance to review the plan, if you have comments, please submit a PR, send a note to the SIG mailing list, make an issue in the SIG's repo, and we will try to address those concerns. Any questions about the CERT SIG? All right. Before we talk about next projects, I wanted to make a note. We are currently doing a cattle call for meeting times for an APAC version of this call. I've had a request from a bunch of folks from Australia that are interested in participating. So we're going to try to capture a time that we can collaborate more with some APAC friends. So if anyone is interested, I believe I gave till Friday for this doodle poll to close, but please feel free to express your opinion if you're interested in participating there. We will, just like the CERT SIG, will report back to this main group as that group gets off the ground. But so far, we actually have quite a few folks that have expressed interest. So I think it'll be a good productive call, including some other voices around the globe. Any comments or feedback on the APAC call? Man, my OpenSSF calls are just full of chatterboxes today. It's crazy.
I think that
Anything done with all the comments.
I would assume that lack of response is a silent approval.
Right.
I will join the APAC call if I get the if I have the capability to do so. That's my intention. I like these meetings and I haven't, yeah. So we'll see what happens.
And my history has been, I love having meetings with folks over in APAC. They tend to be it's a different dynamic and a different energy in those calls, so that will be a lot of fun. And maybe we'll get some California folks as well. It'll be friendlier to California.
Lol.
Yeah, because a lot of these calls are happening during my prime treadmill hours.
No, I've heard.
That's
I have heard. Oh, I want to grab something. I mentioned this in the education SIG today. It may or may not be of interest here. I am part of a group of folks that do judging on assorted scholarships through an organization called ISC Squared. Right now, they are kicking off. There's 2 or 3 different women in cybersecurity scholarship programs that they are doing a review for papers on. So I'll make the same offer here. If anyone has any ISC Squared credentials, and I'll put some details in the meeting agenda when I'm done talking, waving my hands around. But if anyone has any ISC Squared credentials like the CISSP, any of the cloud certs, CSSLP, you are eligible to participate. You will be rewarded not only by helping young people, young women especially, starting off their cyber careers, but you'll earn some delightful CPEs towards your certification requirements. And again, you're helping the general industry. So if anyone's interested, please let me know, and I'll be glad to put you in touch with Carol over at ISC Squared. Thank you. Somebody was sharp on the copy paste. Cool. But it's very worthwhile work. And the scholarships today that I'm talking about that I'll be participating in are focused on young ladies getting into STEM, and then undergrad and graduate ladies getting degrees in cybersecurity, MIS, CIS, and related degrees. Cryptography. There's a lot of folks that want to get into cryptography, which I hated that part. That was my weakest part of the exam. Math. But it's pretty exciting. But they also have a lot of other scholarships towards other underserved communities, towards folks in the military. And this is a global eligibility. So it's not just North America. I've had the opportunity to review submissions from folks from Europe, APAC, Africa, South America, everywhere except Antarctica. Come on, Antarctica, you can pull through and get some ladies trying to get a scholarship. But they have a lot of other opportunities. So if you're interested, let me know. Now I see we've got a couple options. Oh, Jonathan and Madison want to talk about ShmooCon.
I put one in before this. So I got a quick one. Hi, Trevor. I don't mean to call you out, but I sent an invite to Trevor it's like 30 seconds ago in the middle of the beginning, and I don't think he introduced himself. But he pinged me with a question that this working group may be of use to start out with. So Trevor, I'm going to let you introduce yourself and then start if you so feel comfortable to do so. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'm putting you on the spot.
Oh, completely fine. Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah. Okay, so I think I recognize Madison's name here as well. I think I've reached out in the past, but I'm a PhD student at NC State, and what we are working is our latest paper was to identify silent vulnerability fixes. So this is when developers fix vulnerabilities, but don't release security advisories. Yeah, so what we have is we found about 260 some fixes across like PyPI, Maven, NPM. And in the past, what we've tried to do is reach out to developers, but didn't have the best success. Tracking down open source software developers is a little difficult. So what we were wondering now at this point, the fixes are quite old. So most of them well over 6 months to a year to 2 years, because this project was done, well, 6, 7, 8 months ago. And what we're wondering at this point, given the timeline of when those fixes occurred, is it appropriate just to release those fixes? We were targeting the global security database, so GSD, of just go ahead and publish those fixes. We have a bunch of different, like we have granularity at the commit level of when the fix occurred, package names, versions, and so forth. So what's kind of opinions or questions along those lines?
I'll start and everyone else is welcome to join in. My opinion is, as long as you've done your due diligence and you've made a legitimate attempt to reach out to those projects and to coordinate with those developers around the communication and getting the fixes out there, I think you would be perfectly fine using something like the GSD to publish those updates so that downstream consumers understand what's going on. It's my opinion.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would do that. I mean, the other thing you can do is you can get a CVE number, and I suggested you work with like SNCC, or you could go directly to MITRE. And if you've attempted to reach out to the maintainers, they haven't responded, you do think it's a valid security vulnerability. If the maintainer has not responded to say, no, this wasn't a security vulnerability, it's just security hardening, and you get a CVE number and they are upset about it, they can always go back to MITRE or the issuing CNA and ask to contest the CVE, so it'll be listed as, even though it will remain in the database for CVE, it will show up as like vendor disputed or whatever. And then like usually most vendors downstream don't flag for that. So it gives the maintainer the opportunity to opt out retroactively if you've done some bit of work after making a valid attempt to try to reach out to them in the beginning.
Depending on where those projects are housed, there are potentially multiple CNAs that could help. Not only can you go right to MITRE, the CVE program, you could potentially talk with Red Hat. You could talk with Google, GitHub. There's a lot of different organizations that potentially can assist.
I think there's one specific, like I think that the Node.js team, which of course is run by GitHub, is its own CNA. Yep. Madison, correct me if I'm wrong, but they could also do some of this legwork if you give them like all the NPM projects and said, hey, this is all the ones that we've identified. Or I don't know, Madison, you could probably speak to that better than I can.
Yeah, the Node.js team's scope is just Node.js, so it's not like everything on NPM. Everything on NPM, I think, is actually my scope, technically.
Yeah.
A little bit more so. So yeah, it depends where the project is. You can get help in a lot of different places, but yeah.
Sorry.
No, I mean, just the long term, I have run headlong to this issue. The long-term policy of GitHub has been, they will not issue CVE numbers if the maintainer has not explicitly requested it. So you kind of have to find, that's not to say that, that you can't get a CVE number. It just means that GitHub's not willing to be the CNA for that work, unfortunately. So yeah, Art, go for it.
Yeah, everything everyone said already. My additions are, I think you said this is a specific research project. It's not a long-running process that you're describing.
Correct. This was just a research project. So we've ended that effort, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, and again, the others have already said this, but finding the developer, finding in the CVE world, a CNA with appropriate scope now means you have, 1, 2, 3, N parties to go deal with. Since these are public, and to Krove's point earlier, if you've done some moderate due diligence trying to reach folks and they're not answering because they're busy and fixing bugs, and that's fine. And that's very normal in this community. You are, I think, clear. And I'm a CVE board member, so I'm not supposed to say this, but if I were in your shoes, I would bulk assign to via GSD. Have them on record. They've got IDs, they've got write-ups, you've got, git commit URLs. It's a balance of how much time you want to spend. I'd be happy to help you, and so would others, to do it via CVE. But it has these issues of the hierarchy and who you're supposed to go with. Also,
each one needs its own CVE note, though, right, Art? Because it's not like
well,
they're the same security vulnerability for each.
Yeah. So and they should all have separate IDs. This in the CV, this entire area of how many things do we have and how many do we publish and what IDs do they have. It's been in progress for years and it's still sort of in progress. So I personally like when someone comes along with a research project and you've got all of the research, and part of it is, of course, thank you, documenting stuff got fixed, great. Even the act of doing that is a kind of a natural experiment. So you could try the CVE process and say, wow, we put in 300 IDs, we went to like 5 CNAs, it was horrible and took us forever. That'd be a great finding, which I'd expect you to have. Or we just wrote a script that fired off a bunch of GSDs and Josh just took them all and then we were done. So this is part of the experiment. I don't want to tell you your research, of course, but this is always under development. So anytime somebody can sort of poke an edge a little bit in the assignment area, I'm interested. So happy to help if I can, but yeah.
I guess the question that I have is how consumed is the GSD database versus, I mean, NVD's database is pretty ubiquitously consumed. And so the downside is if you just go with GSD, I think that you're going to have less impact on getting the downstream consumers to actually force them to rev versions forward than you would with MITRE and the CVE process, because the CVE process is more ubiquitously used across the industry currently, and so you're going to end up with it's doing that work, even though it may be slightly more work, your work will have a larger positive impact on the security of the supply chain of the entire industry, at least at this current moment.
So I have 2 additional thoughts. First off, this group is the perfect place for us to formulate a reasonable response and some best practices around vulnerability identification and communication. So if this group feels GSD is the awesome sauce, we could figure out a way to endorse that and move that forward, or we could develop a process that does both. Does the bulk upload to CVE and also GSD. So it's kind of this group, we have the ability to kind of set that standard and try to encourage the ecosystem to move forward with whatever process or things we desire, we feel are good and will be acceptable to our development and maintainer friends. And then secondly, as I mentioned in my earlier update that is currently status beige, in the future, there could be a group called the OSS CERT that would be a group that is funded and put together to help with issues just like this, that could also help with the coordination. And they don't exist yet, but that is part of the intention of that group, is to assist in easing coordination and connecting researchers, maintainers, and downstream consumers. So stay tuned. In the future, there might be somebody that can more actively help, but hopefully today that the team has given you some ideas of what your available options are and courses could be to get you what you need to get your important information out there.
From real world, like actual trying to get CVE experience, this group aims to be vendor neutral, yada yada yada. SNCC has been particularly easy to get CVE numbers with. They have a research team. The work that you were doing where you scanned commit feeds to find unreported vulnerabilities, they already have a team inside of SNCC that does that sort of work. So they're familiar with those sort of flows. So you just be giving them more data points to go and consume. They would actually put a real person on them and actually like go through the process of trying to get the CVEs for all those things. So from a minimizing the like amount of work you have to do, they are a good resource. I in the email that I sent you, I alluded to this. The reason that I dislike SNCC is because their database for the information they provide, they do issue a CVE number, they put all the information in it, that's really valuable, but they also create a structured format for the vulnerability information, which includes like the dependency identifier and all that stuff in like a JSON format. That database that they have is proprietary. And so they sell that to their customers, but they still issue the CVE number. The downside of that is that any consumers like GitHub and whoever, they don't get that structured format data. You guys have to, like, all the other consumers of that CVE number have to reconsume it using a manual person, right? So the upside is you get the CV out there, it'll have the positive impact. Downside, it won't be in a structured format, but you can't use somebody like GitHub currently because the maintainer's not in the loop. So GitHub's not going to let you issue the CV number in the way that would give you the ability to put it into a structured format, because GitHub's database is Creative Commons. They're not going to accept it unless it comes in as a CVE number, and then Madison's team consumes it and puts it in the feed. So, you know, that's the state of the world. So I would go with, my suggestion if I were you is I would go with SNCC first, and then if they say we can't help you, or we can't help you with this subset, then go to MITRE. And because MITRE, unfortunately, in my experience, will be slower to react. Things will take a little bit longer, but you could actually, you know, if you could actually have an actual email thread going with SNCC, you know, today pretty quickly, and they'd actually, you know, respond and have a dialogue with you pretty quickly. That's my 10 cents.
Point of order. My friend Dan corrected me. I believe it is Sneak.
Oh, okay, fine. Sneak, sure. Yeah. Also, if you need,
I said SNCC for a decade.
Yeah, I can give you the, I'll send you an email with the direct email address of that. They have a portal on their website, and then they have an email that they don't announce. I'll send you the email that they have to directly communicate with them. So I'll send that to you.
Okay, yeah, this is all really helpful. Thank you all so much for this.
Any additional comments or feedbacks for Trevor and Jonathan? All right. Well, hopefully you are well on your way to making the world a little bit safer place, Trevor. We appreciate that.
Hopefully, thank you.
Now we can do the one that was listed on the open.
Now let's talk about ShmooCon. Someday I'll get there.
Yeah. Madison and I have done about one Slack message between the two of us brainstorming on this, on what we're going to do. You know, we need to, yeah. So we're going to work on the slide deck, but Shmoo is on the 20th. It's Madison and I are speaking. Yeah.
Next week?
20th.
Yep, next week.
Next week.
It's fine. We'll be fine. I'm not worried about it. One thing though that I would like this group's help with is we will be discussing the Finder guide while we're there, right? There are a couple of open PRs against the guide that I would really love if we handled before I advocated for this publicly. Just like, I think they're like fixing some typos and a couple of other things. So I personally think it would be really great to share this if those were handled. Or were they already?
I will.
Maybe they weren't. I didn't even realize.
Clearly, your GitHub notification feed is too packed, Madison.
Oh, if
no, there are a couple. Oh, did Randall fix the linter? That'd be great.
Yeah. So, and I think Randall's linter would address almost everything that I put in my APR anyway, for a lot of it at least. So like there are, a couple grammatical issues, some typos, like things like that. I would love
Man,
if
all
they weren't
checks
there.
failed. Holy cow, let me try this.
I like how Arm shakes his fist at the linter.
Madison, you need to agree to the doco.
Yeah.
What is this the like dash sign off thing?
Yeah, like
No, the linter's just for markdown, just like, yeah.
Just a CI check, yeah. It's a good check. I
yeah.
just fail every time, yeah.
And on that note, things can be turned off because some of that stuff does get in the way. It's not perfect.
If I could get you to resolve the conflicts, Madison, I will get my clicker finger ready to approve that as soon as we get those conflicts resolved. If it's Randall's linter thing, ignore it. But I will do that today during my 5-hour call. That's up next.
When is our next vulnerability disclosure meeting?
2 weeks from right meow.
All right. Madison, we should try to do a demo run of this for someone. And we should like create an artificial deadline that forces us to have a thing ready to go at that time.
We can do that after this meeting.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Does anybody here want to be guinea pigs for a version of that? Yeah, okay, great. Thank you, Crow.
And Yessie, we're glad to help.
Thank you.
And I've presented at a couple conferences, so I'm glad to provide anybody feedback on stuff.
Yep.
Like
Perfect.
30.
Yeah.
Randall,
Yeah,
you have
go
a
for
question
it.
about SmooCon?
No, I had a question if I could grab you for 5 minutes after, because I've gone through the entire education sync plan.
Well, that is a different meeting. And as I mentioned seconds ago, I have a 5-hour meeting starting right after this call.
Okay.
So if we get done early, yes. Otherwise, I can chat via Slack during the awesome 5-hour meeting.
Yep.
You're gonna get takeout for today, aren't you?
I don't get lunch. I just get to sit here and stare.
You have delivery. Sorry, you gotta have delivery.
I have the second part of that call tomorrow. So I have another 5 hours tomorrow.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else about ShmooCon? Perhaps next year we might want to have more than one presentation be there because this is a very popular cybersecurity conference.
Yeah.
All right. If there are no additional questions, let's talk about Snake YAML.
Yeah, so brief update on the Snake YAML case. Between the meeting that I had last, so we met before the holidays last year, and the maintainer was not going to fix it. I sat down with him on a video call for an hour, went around in circles for about 40 minutes, and then finally realized that the minimally invasive change the change that I was asking him to make, he thought was huge. And I said, no, all you have to do is make this minimally invasive change that won't break your API that much. And he's like, oh, I can change that. I'm like, great. So he's going to fix it. So there's now a patch for this 6-year-old remote code execution vulnerability in Snake YAML. Yeah, I spent an hour during my vacation in Punta Cana on this call. But the guy's going to fix it. There is not a release out yet. I think the code has been patched. And then I'm planning on retroactively updating the CVE number that Google put out that stated that there was no fix, because now there will actually be a fix. But I think he's making a major version bump, which means that it is an API breaking change, which is going to decrease the amount of people that will accept it. Headache. But yeah. And then of course, the funny thing about this is as soon as you go and fix this stuff, then you have to go and report it back to like anybody who's written a static code analysis tool to like alert on this vulnerability, like CodeQL. Like it's all these people spend all this time working on like static code analysis tools to find these vulnerabilities across all the downstream consumers. when really, if you just spent a bunch of time like actually getting the maintainer to fix the vulnerability, you wouldn't need to write the detection for the vulnerability. Yeah, it's my rant. So yeah, so I'm gonna do that with CodeQL and see if there's anybody else that's alerting on this particular vulnerability, saying, hey, it's fixed now. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and then on top of that, I'm also looking at I'm looking at YAML parsers in general across the industry, and there's been this long trend of remote code execution vulnerabilities in YAML parsers, and I finally I pinged the specification authors of the YAML spec and said, hey, this has been like a long-standing issue, and like this has been something that's all the YAML parsers seems to have done this. Can we put something in the spec, like the YAML spec itself, to say this is not good behavior? And so that conversation has started. They seem dubious, but I am going to continue to push on that so that maybe we can fix it at the spec level instead of just individual parsers. So, or loaders. Loaders is what I've been told, because there's a difference between parsing and loading YAML. So yes, that's it for me on the snake YAML case. Brief update on that story. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Any questions, comments, feedback for Jonathan on the snake saga? Okie dokie. Next up, let's talk about next/future projects. If you could turn your attention to our issues in our repo, we currently have 3 candidates, and there's nothing to say we can't do all 3 in parallel or that people couldn't work on multiple things at the same time. But currently we have proposals to create plugins or add tooling to enable the CVD guides. And I just talked with Francis from Google, and he's going to come back and he's actually going to try to champion and lead a group working on this. So not only will we have an awesome set of CVD guides, we'll have some tools and plugins and some automation that could help people implement the things in there. Yay. So if anyone's interested in that, I would tickle that issue, make a comment and say, hey, Francis, I'd like to help on this area. So anyone that's a coder or is really good with tooling might be interested in that.
Clarification, tools and plugins for what? GitHub for
Yes.
Oh,
Star. If someone is interested in implementing the steps in our guides, are there ways we could help ease that, automate that?
hey, Kate, how's that API coming?
Looks like it's going great.
Actually, we should have part 1 of the API out by the end of the quarter. But I don't want to commit to that date.
But we would, again, software lives in many different types of repos. Maintainers work in a lot of different spaces. So while we may focus on some of the big major repos, we need to think about ways to empower other types of developers and researchers. But yeah, there is no bad idea there. So if you have an idea for any kind of assistance for people, whether right now we have security researchers and project maintainers are our 2 targets. So if you have any ideas on how you can help automate people, those types of personas implementing our guides, please let us know.
I've thought about adding like refined Git. I mean, a lot of the stuff that I do is on GitHub anyways. I've always thought about like there's certain things that refined GitHub is great. For people who don't know, refined GitHub is a Chrome plugin that adds a bunch of UI elements and improves the GitHub UI across the board. For if you're using GitHub a lot, it's a really good Chrome plugin. But it basically, like, you know, instead of GitHub asking GitHub to implement a feature, you can just, you know, go and issue a pull request to this plugin and then add a feature that you may need to GitHub as a user experience that you know, you can control instead of having to, you know, harass, you know, PMs at GitHub to get things to get implemented. So at least things that are driven by the UI. And so I've thought about trying to automate some of my workflow and make things easier to access via that methodology. I don't know if I have the time to dedicate to it, but that's one of the avenues that I have thought through.
Any other thoughts about the tooling issue? Our other project, which again does not mean we can't do more than one at the same time, is a CVD guide for open source consumers. And we had some question. We had a question in the chat from Sandapan, and a consumer would be anyone downstream from a maintainer. So while a supplier like Ubuntu, SUSE, Red Hat, a distro, so to speak, could be considered a consumer, they more fall into a supplier role. They have some different obligations and tasks within the supply chain. This guide is focused primarily on think about an enterprise end user. So like a bank or a developer working at a retailer, or that type of person would fall into that persona. And we do have our personas documented in our Git repo. I'll track down a link in a minute. But so we were thinking about, we have 2 awesome guides that are getting more awesome as Madison resolves her PR. Now we would have potentially a 3rd focused on this consumer persona. So this is another task. Are folks interested and available to start thinking about that? I know I'd like to work on it, and I have some friends from the end user working group that also would like to collaborate with us. All right. And then our other project idea was a guide for maintainers. So kind of like a supplementary or a companion piece for our existing CVD guide, but a guide for maintainers on handling incidents. And the idea here is more of a playbook that if you're a maintainer and you have a report or you get information about an active incident, this is meaningful steps you could take right meow to work on addressing that issue. So this could be a checklist, a playbook, but not intended to replace the CVD guide. This is more of you're in the fire. How do you get out of that? What do people think about that?
I think it's interesting. This is Carolyn.
Oh, cool. Thank you. So I have, give me a second while I Google around. So we, within another working group, we are spinning up I have a typo in the title. Oh, bad probe. We are spinning up a subgroup that's going to focus in on a best practices guide around source code management best practices. So we could do something similar here where we set up a poll and have people that are interested in working on any of these 3 projects and kind of express when they're available to do that. So are folks interested in me setting up 3 polls and kind of see if we get some raise of hands of folks that are interested in contributing towards these efforts? Okay. The worst part about all these calls is I end up with a pile of action items. I don't even do this for my job. Probe on doodles. All right, so I will get some doodles set up. And so pay attention to our Slack channel and our mailing lists for notification on how and where to vote. And I'll promise I don't have a typo in our titles because this group's much better.
I'm gonna throw another one out there because it keeps kicking it around in my head. So we have the guides, right?
Another doodle or another project?
No, another project idea, kind of. So we have these guides, right? As they're written. So the idea of like speaking about these guides is one way of getting the information about these guides out there. But is there other avenues, video, so I don't know, some other alternative sort of media way that we could communicate this stuff out there to get it into people's hands in a way that they might consume it better, more densely packed, hey, high level, I have ADHD, thinking about how someone like myself, which I read the guide because I was working on it, but like someone who wants something faster, a video, a bunch of graphics, something like that, a more condensed version of this information in a way that they could share it, consume it, yada yada yada.
You're not gonna like
that's
my
a wonderful
answer,
idea.
but it's a TikTok.
Yeah, that's what I do like your answer, because I mean I don't use TikTok, but like that sort of content format, right, is fast, dense, and I don't know if any of us can come up with content like that, but there may be external organizations and firms that we could contract with that are good at creating graphics that are high quality to help us put the messaging that the messaging we've already put in writing, condensing it even further into a format that could be quickly consumable by people.
I think infographics are really good. A lot of dense information, just one snapshot. I've seen that used a lot as well.
So I personally feel this is an excellent idea. I have a couple suggestions on how it could be executed. But does anyone else have any similar thoughts on Jonathan's proposal to augment and create some different views of our information to get it out to more viewers?
I think it'd depend on our targeted audience. 'Cause then we can tackle onto social medias, which is like one of the biggest ways to market.
So I'll start rambling in hopes of other people kind of stewing the creative juices. We have a couple outlets today, Jonathan. We absolutely could leverage the LF marketing team. Jennifer, we could figure out some tweets. We could do some blogs. That is a very simple and quick way to get information out like next week. Don't quote me on a time, but that's very quick to market. We have the ability, if this group is interested, we could create our own video, our own graphics, and then work with the LF team. They have a graphics budget, so we can kind of, again, talk with Jennifer to get like an infographic put together. Or if someone within the group has a creative tinge to their skill set, we definitely could leverage some of that. So that's 2. Option 3, there is the best special interest group, the education working group, has, as part of their plans to address the mobilization plan, is they will be spinning up a OpenSSF podcast focused on AppSec topics. So we could file an issue over in the education SIG and request collaboration that group, which ends up being me, does assistance on doing podcasts, webinars, and just kind of focusing time. And then those, the education people are, again, focused in on that topic, that delivery of content. So we have the LF education team we also can lean into if there were different, if we wanted to make a class, and we probably should make a class as part of the LF curriculum on CVD practices. That would probably be another great idea. So those were just a handful of things we can do short to medium term. And what I do for my job in actual life is I do a lot of podcasts. So I have the equipment and the ability to do some editing. So I'm glad to help out and assist with that. The tickety talks, I don't do. My kids make fun of me too much.
Yeah, I know that you can get nice graphics out if you, having worked for companies that you know, have marketing teams that you know, you contract with the right one and then you get nice graphics out of them, right? You get nice videos and stuff like that. So trying to figure out, you know, what to communicate, and then also, you know, how to do so in a fast way, and then trying to tap into one of those resources. I think that understanding how much that would cost, you know, yada yada yada. But I think that
That's
it
another
being in
option.
writing- yeah. So yeah, it being in writing is great, but you know, it's only going to get out there if we market it.
And I will suggest that since most of us assist in selling free software, there generally is frowned upon to spend a lot of dozens of dollars. But that is an option. We could potentially put a proposal together and shoot that up to the TAC for governing board approval if we wanted to get involved an agency. And that's, again, I deal with those folks all the time, and they have varying prices, and they even can do stuff less expensively by, you know, contracting out through the internet. If I need help with graphics or whatever, you can for a lower fee and not necessarily going through a professional agency. We have a lot of options, and I would first off suggest and strongly encourage you to write up your idea as a issue within our repository so that other people can type in their feedback and we can collaborate on that. I think it's a great idea, though, and I'm glad to help. Any other comments? Shut up, Siri.
She was just trying to help.
I know. Anyone not named Siri have any comments on Jonathan's idea?
You're as bad at modern social-ish computing as I am.
Right.
Siri, TikTok, I don't know how I can't use these things.
My fat wrist hit the button. All right, but yeah, I would ask you to write the idea up in an issue, Jonathan, and that way we can get some more eyes. And the education SIG definitely will help longer term, you know, later this year. But if we wanted to do something sooner, there's nothing stopping us to have a call to, you know, do an outline for an infographic and then, you know, start to solicit around. Do we have anyone else that might have additional suggestions for small projects the group might want to work on next or in the future? All right. Well, I will adjourn our call this week. Thank you, everyone, for participating. Madison and Jonathan, if you would like a second set of eyes on your presentation or an audience, let me know. Ping me on the Slacks. And otherwise, we will talk to everyone within 2 weeks. If you have feedback on anything, pop it into an issue, talk about it on Slack, or send something out to the mailing list. And I'll be sending you all some spam with some doodle polls shortly. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Can I grab
you,
you
Crow.
for one quick question, Crow?
You can grab me for one quick question. You have 7 minutes before my terrible call.
Okay, so I think that the problem